Hello and welcome back to Murder Analysed. I'm Christina Moore and thank you for joining me for another true crime case. This is the David Carrick case.
Searching for
articles relating to the offences
in St Albans
in 2020. This is the allegation that's been made to us, okay, sir?
There's no necessity.
Yes, there is.
I've only been a police officer for 20 years.
Right, David.
Do you want me to come naked like this?
No, just understand you're under arrest, okay?
I'm under
just
arrest.
explain to us, what do you need?
Hold it like this. Don't
Right.
worry about it.
Can one of my colleagues go and get you stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to? Yeah. Which one's yours?
That one.
Okay.
Sake.
Now, before we get started on the case, I'd just like to say hello to all my partners in crimes behind the scenes at my members lounge, and I thank you for your support. Now, with every scheduled video that's coming out, it's now coming out on a Monday, and it will be 2 videos on a Monday. They're both long form videos, and there'll be one in the morning and one in the afternoon. My members will get them 24 hours, at least 24 hours before, so they can have a private viewing. Also, other videos that I do for my members, so behind the scenes stuff that I can't say on here, goes behind there, and lots of other things, plus they get one extra case just for them, which is not released to public at all. So if you're interested in joining my Partners in Crime members, you can see the links on your screen, and they're also in the description and at the end of this video. So before we get started on this case, just there's a warning with this case. This case is about a serial rapist. He's also a very extremely violent domestic abuser. So there's issues in this case if they may, make you feel upset, but this is what it's about today. I don't hold back in what I say. I'm quite graphic in what I say. So listen, this is the David Carrick case. An ex-police officer. Well, he was only an ex-police officer because he was caught, to tell the truth. He was a police officer for 20 years. He lived in Stevenage in Hertfordshire, but he worked for the Met Police. Many of you would have heard this case, but we're going to go into details about not only the serial rapist side of David Carrick, but also his manipulation and skill that he had, not only to date rape women, really, because that's what he did, and used his influence as a police officer to make them feel comfortable, but he also met women and sort of, I suppose you could say, grooming. He groomed women to move in with him, and then the abuse really started. So David Carrick, he was born the 4th of January in 1975, and at the time of his arrest he was a 49-year-old serving police officer. He was, I think, born in Wiltshire and in England, and he, as I said, he was a Met Police officer. Now, he was a police officer for the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection group or squad. The same as the other police officer that you've all heard about, and his name is Wayne Couzens. So they was in the same squad, right? Both was allowed to carry firearms, and both was serious abusers of women. One ended up, killing Sarah Everard. And it was after Sarah Everard's murder by Wayne that this man, David Carrick, then was reported, because people had held back for many, many years about these rapes that this Carrick had committed. They was too scared to come forward. They didn't think they would be believed. And probably, to tell you the truth, at that time this man was such a manipulator, and the force was different. He'd been a police officer for 20 years, in the Met. So he believed that he wouldn't get caught. He'd had the education, he had the training within the police in domestic abuse and how to treat them sort of victims and rape victims. That's what he worked at before he went on to the diplomatic corps. He'd actually done a course on domestic violence. And this is where he's got the understanding of how to manipulate and how to make sure he doesn't get caught, because he used that training not for the good of the people and the community that he was meant to be serving, but to manipulate women into doing whatever he wanted them to do, knowing that they wouldn't actually be caught. Now, one of the women that he raped was also a serving police officer, and she didn't report it either for the fear of not being believed. So there's lots of issues to this case, and as we go through this case, it's going to become quite apparent that this man is such a predator, right? He's one of the worst serial rapists, and really, when you talk about domestic violence, and we've been doing a lot on domestic violence, this man, the things I've had to read about what he'd done to women is shocking. It really is. It's depraved. This is a depraved man. So let's get it straight out there now when we talk about rape of a woman or a man, right? Because it happens to both. Rape is not about the sex. It's about the power they want over you. It's about control. It's about humiliation. That's really what it's about. And this David Carrick, he loved it. He couldn't get enough of it. So if he couldn't groom someone, because it was a slow grooming process for him to make these young girls, and they was all young, right, all young, feel comfortable enough that they would go out with him or move in with him, he understood with these people how it works, right? So give a scenario of one of David's victims, one of the early victims. First, what we know of, right? So he'd served as a police officer at this time for about 18 months. I mean, this man was always a rapist. I think there's many, many more, and there's much more we don't know about David Carrick. But his first victim was when he was a serving PC in the Met Police for about 18 months. So he'd gone onto a dating site, and of course, you know, I always say about dating sites that you have to be careful because not everyone tells the truth, but he actually did tell the truth. On the surface truth, he was a serving police officer and he wanted to meet out in a public place to make her feel safe, which they did, right? So this girl thinks, oh, that's good. So he gets to this restaurant or bar early. He's already ordered the bottle of wine. He's poured 2 glasses out. So when the girl arrives, he shows her his warrant card. I'm a police officer. You can trust me. She's in a public place, in a bar. I'm safe. So now he's lowered, hasn't he? Any fear in her. He's being honest. He is who he says he is. He showed me the warrant card. We're in a public place. She's relaxed. So she drinks the wine. Then all of a sudden, she becomes overly drunk on a glass of wine. Can hardly speak. Then he takes her to a hotel that he's organised. And this man raped this woman so terribly that she's never got over it. But also, he made sure that she wasn't going to report it. Because who's going to believe you? You've willingly gone out now with this man. You've gone to a public place. Dating drugs, yes, they've been around for years. But really, I don't think she even knew she had been drunk. She couldn't remember a lot of it, but this girl was severely hurt. She had broken ribs, and she said the things that he had done to her were like an animal. And this girl was very, very young. Not a child, but very, very young lady. So she never reported it until the murder of Sarah Everard came up. And she thought, I need to report this, because she believed that because it was a police officer, they may believe her now, right? Because police officers actually do this sort of thing. So she reported him, and then that's when the investigation started. And it literally opened up a can of worms. But what the Met Police didn't know, that there was 5 other police services around the country also at that time investigating Carrick 5. Whether it was for domestic violence, whether it was for, you know, these sort of rape charges, it's unknown. But because at that time, and I don't even think they link it up today, no one knew that all these charges were going around until they really started to seriously look into Carrick. Now, Carrick had had, right from about 18 months when he was into the police, he had already had things said about him. I think 8 times that he had to be questioned, you know, under the disciplinary thing for sexual content, you know, sexual behaviour, inappropriate behaviour, all this sort of stuff, and nothing was done. This man should never ever have been a police officer, right? He never should. He used the power that he was given to abuse women, and abuse them he did. And this case is now just about to get worse. But listen, if you are a victim of rape or of domestic abuse, at the end of this video, and just towards the end of this video, I'll be putting up some helpline numbers. You should report it, right? You should. If you can, you should. You will be believed. Now, you will. Things have changed. When Carrick joined this police force, he had been in the army for a couple of years. That was no good because the army, you see, liked to control you. Where Carrick wanted to control the public. Can you imagine this man out in the public talking to rape victims, domestic abuse victims? You know, that's what his job was in the early days. Now, his own colleagues called him Bastard Dave. That's what they called him. So if your own colleagues are calling you that, what hope does the public have? What hope does the women have that now you've got under your control? You don't have any chance with this man at all. Now let's talk about this serving police officer, because it's important that we understand why she didn't come forward. So she served with him. They was traffic cops at the time in the early days, and she worked with him. So he's like a first responder and stuff like that for the domestic abuse and the rapes and stuff. So they are there. They're the first responders, right? But before that, he was in traffic and he worked with this young PC. And they got a relationship going because, as I said, this man is a groomer, right? He's a manipulator, right? This girl was always going to be raped. She didn't know it. But in his mind, he knew it, because that is the only way that this man can actually get an erection, right? Let's be honest, because he can't do it any other way, because he's never had any normal relationship in his whole life. He abuses women so he can, really, his own sexual gratification, because that's the only way he can do it. So this poor young girl, she's only young, she's been in the police a couple of years, she likes him. She likes him. He's funny, he's happy, he's grooming her. And this goes on for about 6 months. And then he says, let's go out on a date. So she thinks, yeah, you know, he's great. He's great. Great fun. He's been great. You know, his ways can be a bit funny. You know, it's a bit of banter sort of going on. And she agrees to go out with him. So he takes this beautiful meal. They sit and have this beautiful meal and everything's happy and great. And then he says, come back to my flat. And she's willing, right? Because she's open now to a relationship with Carrick. That's what she's open to. Because he's so nice. She thinks this is it. I've met someone that I'm probably going to spend the rest of my life with. We're both police officers. You know, we've had this long-term sort of 6 months of getting to know each other. No sex. None of that. And she thinks this is it. Right, I'll go back. So she says she's had the meal, had a few drinks, and she's gone back to his flat. But the minute that she got in that flat, this man changed. Because I said at the beginning, this man is a serial rapist. He can't get an erection unless he's going to rape and abuse you and hurt you. So as she's walked into his bedroom, there's photographs of Carrick all around the bed. There's guns. There's knives. She now knows, hang on a minute, something's wrong here, because this man's personality has now changed. So then you start He punched her, ripped her clothes off, threw her on the bed, and raped her so badly that this girl did not know and didn't have a chance to get away. He never intended to have a serious relationship with her. He only wanted to rape her, but he couldn't just do it because she was a serving police officer. So he had to make it look like that if she had reported it, that they wouldn't believe her. Because they'd been seen together. She'd told people she liked him. Everyone knew they was going out on this date, and probably the night was going to be the night. But you see, in David Carrick's mind, she was going to be raped that night, and that's all he wanted. And once he raped her, seriously raped this girl, hurt this girl, then that was it. He didn't want to know her anymore. So that's the true character of David Carrick. That's how he really was. And this continued on for nearly 20 years. So Carrick's known abuse and crimes of a serial rapist started in about 2003. And he was caught and arrested for the first incident in 2003, this young girl, the first one that he took out to the thing, in 2020, right? Then he was like suspended for a while investigations, but I don't even think the police understood really about how bad this man could have been. Now, he was sentenced actually to 35 life sentences. 35, right? He hasn't murdered anyone that we know of. This is for being a serial rapist. This is how bad. He's probably the worst serial rapist in this country that we've had, or that we know about, this man. Because he was persistent in it. Persistent. So his criminal charges were 1 count of attempted assault by penetration, 1 count of causing a person to engage in sexual activity without consent, 2 counts of indecent assault, 2 counts of attempted rape, 3 counts of false imprisonment, and we'll go to that in a minute, 3 counts of coercive and controlling behaviour, 5 counts of assault by penetration, and 23 counts of rape. This is the charges that he admitted to, right, in the end. But the one he didn't admit to was the first victim who started it all off. You see, this man loves control. So he's admitted to the rest. But the one that started it, the one that took away his career, the one that put him in prison, right, he wasn't going to admit to. Now, because the court and had all his admitted to all these others, they never then pursued that first rape victim's allegations. Because really, it comes down to money. So he was always going to go to prison. So this girl, even though she started it all off, she got him, right? She got him. But she got no justice because he would not admit it. He would not give that girl the control. He still, to this day, says he didn't do that one. He will not admit it. And no one's pushing for it because the man's going to be locked up. I think he's up for parole in 2052, I think. Long time. I see if the man lasts in there. Listen, a serving police officer goes to prison. It's not a great thing for them, right? For the prisoners, it's great. But this man, really, you have to think. He's tried to kill himself about 10 times already. He's always trying to do it because he's lost control. Because when you go to prison, right, they are in control. You've lost all control. And it was all about control for this man. It was all about it. So he is really suffering, and I hope he suffers and he suffers and he suffers. And yeah, they won't allow him to kill himself because you need to spend all them time, all them years in that prison for what you've done to these women, especially for what you've done for the first victim, that you wouldn't even admit what you had done. I think this girl has saved so many other girls from this perpetrator. She was a strong girl. Alright, it may have took her 17 years to come forward. So when she saw the death and the pictures of a police officer up when it was Sarah Everard had been murdered in such a terrible way. She thought, I can't hold this back anymore. I'm going to have to say. And so the girls that she saved, really, and then this also started within not only the Met Police but other police services, is that they now look at how they recruit. They've gone through thousands and thousands of old serving police officers, and a lot of them are losing their jobs, right? They are. Because for many years, police officers have got away with it. Now, people say about police officers, and I slate police officers all the time, because sometimes they need to be bloody slated, right? They need it. They need it to keep them on track, to stop this sort of thing happening again, these perpetrators that want to cause harm to women or to anybody, really. Listen, we have in this country a sort of an agreement, right? We allow them to manage us in a way to keep law and order at bay, right? That's what we do. It's like a joint thing, isn't it? We accept that they're going to do it and they do their job. But how much respect for the police has been lost because of police officers like Wayne Couzens, David Carrick, and there's another one actually in the news only a couple of days ago. Another one. He's only been serving for a couple of years. We have people in the police service that want to join for the wrong reason. They want to join because it gives them access to vulnerable people. It gives them the power, which they so desperately need, because they couldn't get anything without it. And we've got to dwindle these people out. So the question, I suppose, with this case is, when we are researching these cases, that the police have looked into these, right? It's just come out that Wayne Couzens should never have been a police officer. It's been proven. But when they and Carrick became a police officer about 20 years ago, the mindset of the police was different, right? It was like an old boys club, wasn't it, really, when you think about it? You've been done for a domestic abuse, or you're suspected of domestic abuse. But you laugh it off, oh, pat on the back, don't worry about it. It was a mistake. She's lost it a little bit. And he talked his way out of it. You shouldn't be allowed to talk your way out of anything, especially in today's society. The police are losing respect left, right and centre. They are. But if we don't have law and order and police that can do their job, we're going to have anarchy. So when the police start to do their investigations, and like with Carrick, where he was investigated by 5 different services at the same time, and nothing was really matching up and done, no one knew about it, it's wrong, right? Because this man could have been taken off very early on in 2003, not in 2020-21. It's too late. You've damaged so many people's lives in the time that you've been a serving police officer. And so the police now have a massive challenge on their hands to try and dwindle out these sort of predators and stop investigating their own. You need to put it to an outsource where someone else is going to investigate crooked cops, serial rapist coppers, danger to people that you've put on the street in a position of power. This is what's happening. And so then lots of things have got to change. The public's perception of a police officer today is so low. It's so low that half of them don't even ring the police. As a woman, would you stop your car if a police officer was flagging you down, the blue lights going, on a dark country road? I wouldn't. Take me to court. I ain't stopping. I'll stop and talk to them, or I'll drive to the local police station. I'm not stopping. I wouldn't stop. So I'm not the only one that thinks that. People think that who's had no issues with the police before. But when we see this pumping on the telly, all this stuff, and on YouTube and everywhere else, because it needs to be said that we cannot be controlled by people that can't control their people that they hire. They're hiring, you're putting us in danger by not recruiting the correct people to do the job. And that makes then all the other police officers that are doing a good job and trying to do their job, one, dangerous for them, because now in England especially, some places are lawless. Because why would you trust a police officer? Why would you allow a police officer to tell you what to do when all you're seeing is the corruption and the absolute murders and rapes of citizens and the community members? They wouldn't. So it's dangerous for the police now out on the streets because the respect has gone. And unfortunately, there is 99% of the police are really good. But the 1%, and there seems to be a lot of this 1% at the minute coming out, give the rest of them a bad name. But as a society, we should be demanding more. And as a police force, they should be demanding more, shouldn't they? The Met Police are just shit at the minute, I'm telling you, in the way they're being run. We got rid of that Coercive dick, you know, the head of the police, and we've got this other one, says I'm going to do change. Well, do your bloody job. Do it. Change. Change, because really, last week, 2 years this man served as a police officer, this other one that's just coming up. 2 years. And you've been done for indecent images and stuff of children and all this stuff. Listen, people are manipulative, and I'm not saying they're not. You're going to go to these tests, you're going to go to these interviews to be a police officer. These are manipulative people. Then hire people, right, other than police officers, to really look at these people. Don't you interview them, allow others to interview them that can see through the deception, because obviously they can't. So the whole process of these police and how they recruit has got to change. It's got to change, or else we will see more David Carricks really coming out. And it's too late in the end to say, I'm sorry, we've made a mistake. There's some critical errors. There was critical errors in the case of David Carrick from a very early on that the police have made. There was critical errors in Wayne Couzens that murdered Sarah Everard. Now it's been proven they should never have been police officers. It's bloody shocking, and it's got to stop. But this David Carrick, born in the 4th of January, that's my birthday actually, in 1975, this serial rapist, this former police officer, this domestic abuser, and this is what we're going to go on to in a minute, this domestic abuse side of him, so you can see the real character now of David Carrick. So he worked in the armed police officers, as an armed police officer in this Parliamentary Protection Unit, and you think, his own colleagues are calling him Bastard Dave, but you're going to give this man a gun. So no one's questioned why his own colleagues have given him this nickname. I mean, no one's questioning it. He has people above him, right? He was only like a PC. He has lots of people above him that should have been looking out for these sort of signs. There's red flags here. When someone is calling you that, right, it's showing that, as a serving police officer, I mean, don't forget he looked after, the Prime Minister and all these sort of people. This is the power this man had. With a gun. With a gun. So now you've got a nutter, right, who hates women, who wants to abuse and perpetrate women in such a way that he's destroyed their lives with a bloody gun. And his own colleagues are calling him that. And I think, what is wrong with this police? Are they too scared? Are we that desperate for police officers that we've got to keep these sort of people in it? No, it's the system what's wrong, right? And I keep saying it, that's got to be changed, and this is what we should be pushing for in the UK, is for serious change to how our police forces run. Because in the end, if we don't, I'm telling you now, right, we will have anarchy. We will. There will be no law and order, because they will not be able to manage the public. There's a lot more of us than there is of them, and they forget that. And we have a lot of serious criminals in the UK that have no respect for the police at all. Anyway, And we've got more and more coming up through the ranks, you know, in the gangs and everything else. So if we don't start taking control of our police, we have serious issues in the UK to deal with. Serious. So he joined the police force in 2001. And then in 2021 was when this young girl came through. And in 2022 he pleaded guilty to all the other crimes that I've mentioned, apart from that one girl. And then he was also sentenced then to his so many life terms, right? And as I said, his parole date would look at about, you know, 2052. So this man ain't got a chance in hell of getting out. As I said, if he survives that long, probably won't. But he needs to. He needs to spend his time. But this man would be a dangerous person even after that. Don't forget, he was 49 when he went in. He's going to die in prison, right? He is. Because this man could never be allowed, because the public wouldn't allow it. They wouldn't allow it. And there's no way no parole board's going to give this man early parole. There would be hell to pay in this country if they've done that. Yeah, so I think he was sentenced 2023, so we're in 2024 now. So he served, you know, from 2021 because he was put in custody in 2021, but his actually sentence started in 2023. So that's got rid of him. But I want to talk to you now about the other side of David. We know he's a serial rapist, and that was on people that he met and sort of, as I say, you know, made them feel at ease, make it easier to rape. And he did use a date rape drug. Most of the girls that have said that they felt that, they couldn't prove it, but they felt that because they had lost total control and couldn't fight anyway. And again, most of the people that he raped were either groomed to be raped, or they were met on a night out where he made them feel at ease in nightclubs or restaurants or bars and stuff like that. But then we have the ones that he then got to live with him, right? So again, I told you, he was a groomer. He understood what to do, because it's difficult, isn't it? You're trying to work. This is how he's thinking. He wanted someone at home on tap, right, to abuse and rape. So his plan was, the first victim comes forward and says about her experience with David Carrick. She was a younger woman, but she also had a 10-year-old daughter. So she was single person, and she was single mother. And he swept her off her feet, really. She didn't live with him. She had her own place and stuff, and she was managing her daughter. She thought the sun shone out of him, right? He was her knight in shining armour. Serving police officer, he treated her great, brought her stuff, took her out for meals, everything. But then as the weeks and a few months went on, he said to her, "Why don't you move in? I can look after you." By this stage, she's smitten with him, right? So she decides her and her 10-year-old daughter will go and live with him. And this is in Stevenage in Hertfordshire, because this is where this man lived. And she moved in with him, and from day one, he controlled what she ate, what she wore. He would rape her regularly, very regularly, with the daughter next door, and who would have been hearing everything about this, what was going on. He would use certain things. He was sadistic. He was so controlling and manipulative, but his main aim was to degrade. So he would urinate in their mouth. They had to drink his urine. He would punch, hit, lock them in cupboards. You know, it's just shocking. Alienate them from their families, their friends, control their phone calls, who they could ring, check them, everything, right? He had CCTV cameras in his house, so he could watch what she was doing. Now, this wasn't the only one that had this experience with him. There was a few living victims I'll call them, of this man. Then that, you see, saved him from having to go out, well, we think, because if he's using a date rape drug to rape people, a lot of women won't remember what's happened. And even though more reports keep coming through, there may be some that just feel they can't report it. But the domestic abuse here was so serious, right? The coercive control was so serious to these women. I think that relationship lasted 10 months. 10 months. And this woman finally got away. Finally got away. But she didn't report it because she was so scared. You see, because she knew how dangerous he was. She knew how violent he was. And also that he was a serving police officer. So who would believe her? The next one was a younger girl. After this one, a younger girl, quite young. Again, he manipulated her, he groomed her, took her out, brought her stuff, said move in, you need to move in, I'll take care of you. This was the character of David Carrick. All in his mind though was setting her up to be severely abused. Severely abused. With her, she did ring the police once, or the neighbours actually rang the police because of the screams and shouts and the violence. He had held a gun to her head and she believed that at that time she was going to die. So when the police turned up, she didn't say. Because he was a serving police officer, she said it was a misunderstanding, we just had a row, you know what it's like. You know what it's like, right? These women. Don't worry, nothing's happening. They've left. A few months later, this continued going on where this girl again was beaten, raped daily, locked in cupboards, starved, told what she could and couldn't wear, isolated from her family. The cameras in the house continued to watch her. But you see, this girl fought back a little bit. She contacted her sister, how she'd done it, and she must have been so scared in doing that. And the family then done an intervention and got the girl out of the property, and that's how she left it. It was soon after that that he was then arrested on the rape charges.
Searching for
Articles relating to the offences
in St Albans.
in 2020. This is the allegation that's been made to us, okay, sir?
There's no necessity.
Yes, there is.
I've been a police officer for 20 years.
Right, David.
Do you want me to come naked like this?
No, just understand you're under arrest,
I know
okay?
I'm under
Just
arrest.
explain to us, what do you need?
Hold it like this. Don't
Right.
worry about it.
Can one of my colleagues go and get you stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to? Yeah.
Which one's yours?
That one.
Okay.
Sake.
And so there was many more domestic violent abuses and cases with him. But the extreme, you could imagine if 2 girls had gone through this, all of the girls would have gone through this. All of them would have gone through this absolutely torturous experience with this man that has really left them so destroyed that it's difficult for them to get over. But at least they got justice, because when their cases were brought to the police listened, and he did admit to everything to do with these women and these others. So David Carrick wasn't just a serial rapist, a control freak, a manipulator, a groomer. He was the most dangerous of all, because he wanted to control every aspect of a woman's life in that property. And sooner or later, as that young girl said, she believed that one day he would have killed her. He was always going to escalate. It was never going to be enough for him. In the end, he had to be caught. So thank God that that young girl from 2003, his first known rape victim, came forward and had this whole thing stopped. Because this is how dangerous this man really is. Now, since he was arrested, of course, calls have gone out for anyone else. So if you are a victim of David Carrick, or if you know of any victims of David Carrick that have not come through, you need to come forward, because you will be believed. You will be. Now, it's they're not going to go through with a trial, are they? Whatever, they're not. But what it will do for the people that's still out there, it will give them some relief to tell their story and to know that they are believed, right? They are believed. And they could make some change with their stories, because if the police understand how he done it, they can make changes. So this is really what it's all about. But David Carrick is just evil. He's just an evil, sick man. So listen, you've got to think this man knows the law, right? He's been a serving police officer since 2001. So he understands the law. He understood how to work women. He'd seen firsthand as a first responder the impact that domestic abuse and rape victims have, because he's the first one on that scene, right? It's an important role. But with a first responder, they should have empathy, and they should also have a feeling that they can help them people. But David Carrick used this knowledge that he had to abuse women, and that's what makes him so dangerous. So with the law, of course, when he's gone or going to court, he decides to say that it was his background that made him do it. It turns out, to tell the truth, that again, with all perpetrators like this, they're going to lie and say anything to get away with what they do. And there was no evidence of his background being anything other than quite normal. You know, nothing would stand out. But some people, you know, are just born bad, right? And want to blame others for their issues, right? David Carrick was nothing more than an impotent man that could only really get an erection through violence, through intimidation, through humiliation, through power. That's really all he is. And I hope that he serves every day in that prison, in hell. Because the girls that these ladies and these girls that he has abused over these years live every day the same nightmare. Because not one of them has got over it. Not one. So the police have a lot to answer for allowing this man to be able to get his hands on such people. They should have stopped him before. And I hope from these cases that are now in front of them, you see other police forces now looking into their own, investigating now, because they know the seriousness of not doing it. They know what's going to happen if the public turns so against them, really, that there's no coming back from it. So anyway, this has been the David Carrick case. Shocking case it is. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please subscribe. I always forget to say it. Subscribe, like button, and share it out. But if you have any issues with anything, look at the numbers that are coming up, and I wish you all well. So thanks for joining me today. Until the next time. Bye-bye.